Ielts Listening, version 30623. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. Write all your answers in the listening question booklet. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1 on page 2 of your question booklet. Section 1. You will hear a telephone conversation between a woman who is looking for information about holidays and an agent for a tour company. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 7 on page 2. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Asia Pacific Tours, can I help you?
Yes, I've been looking at your website and I'd like some more information about your activity holidays.
Certainly. You know, of course, the prices of the tours include stays in 3-star hotels and they include airfares.
Great. What about your tour of Vietnam? My sister went there last year and loved it.
The first tour the caller asks about is Vietnam, so Vietnam has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 7.
Asia Pacific Tours, can I help you?
Yes, I've been looking at your website and I'd like some more information about your activity holidays.
Certainly. You know, of course, the prices of the tours include stays in 3-star hotels and they include airfares.
Great. What about your tour of Vietnam? My sister went there last year and loved it.
Yes, it's a really beautiful place and probably our fastest growing destination. Now that package includes several opportunities to take courses.
Don't you have a cookery course of some kind?
We certainly do. If you love eating out in Vietnam like most people do and want to know how to prepare a meal, you can learn how from a master in a 5-star hotel. On another day, you have a choice of 2 activities. The first is instruction in diving in the South China Sea. Not a certificate course, but just an introduction. Most people think it's wonderful. Or, if you want to stay dry but still want some exercise, you can spend the day on a trek through the jungle near the beach. It's not difficult, and everyone seems to enjoy it.
Anything cultural on offer?
We used to take people to a Vietnamese opera, but that didn't prove so popular. So now we include a dance show, and our clients all rave about that. They say the colours are just magnificent.
What's the cost?
I've just noticed it's now a special price. The holiday used to be £1,600, but it's just been reduced to £1,450, so you do save quite a bit. And as I said, it seems to be our up-and-coming tour.
Well, let's see. Perhaps you could tell me a little about the Hong Kong tour. I notice it includes a walk in the hills of one of their country parks, where you have the chance to see birds of all sorts.
Yes, that's a very popular activity. People don't realise that Hong Kong isn't just a crowded city. That's a half-day activity and you go with a trained escort, and it includes dinner in a monastery where you end your day. And then we wouldn't want you to miss out altogether on shopping, so there's another day when we take you round an electronics factory. Now, That might sound like an odd thing to do, but it's actually really fascinating and not like your usual ceramics factory. And you can buy their products there quite cheaply. Now, the whole Hong Kong package is just £1,320 per person.
Sounds interesting.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 8 to 10 on page 2. Now listen and answer questions 8 to 10.
But let me find out about one more place. I've always wanted to go to Korea, but not on this trip. And I've been to Thailand, which I loved. But what about your Japan package?
Good choice. Well, that tour includes a terrific trip to a museum of traditional costume. The exhibits are gorgeous. They've got an absolutely priceless collection.
And I think the website says you take your clients to a market, don't you? A crafts market, I think.
Well, we do go to a market, but it's one that sells fish, and it's one of the largest in the world. And you have the chance to sample the wares in a little restaurant nearby. We also give you plenty of free time to wander around the city with our guides if you want.
And what's the cost of all that?
£1,800.
Well, you've been ever so helpful. I've noted all the details down, and I'll get back to you when I've made up my mind.
If we can give you any more help, do ring back.
Thanks, I will.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Part 2. You will hear a guide talking to a group of tourists who are going to spend a day on an island. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 14. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Well, morning everyone. Welcome to Palm Island. First, I'll run through the plan for the day. So, the idea is that in the morning you'll go for a walk. There are actually a number of different walks on the island, so I'll describe each one and then you can choose. So there's the boundary walk. This is one of the longer walks and it will appeal especially to people who love the coastline. And in fact, the tide is out today, so it'll be perfect for exploring the very old rock formations behind the beach. A good option is the loop track. Now, this is quite short, but don't be misled by that because it's very hilly and you need to be quite fit. The reward, though, is that you'll be able to see right down the length of the island and even across to the mainland. It'll be pretty as a picture on a fine day like today. There's the Pururi Walk, which follows one of the earliest trails that was built on the island. Unfortunately, the track's been damaged slightly by a storm, but it's still passable. The nice thing is, about halfway there's a table and chairs. They've recently been restored and painted, in fact, and it's a great place to eat your packed lunch and have a rest. You could also walk up to North Head. This is an inland walk. You'll hardly get a glimpse of the sea the whole way, but the attraction is you'll pass through a large area of very old native bush. The number of birds is amazing, including several rare species. You'll find some are quite tame, but please don't give them any food.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20.
Okay, well, after your walk, the bus will take you to the regional park where you can relax for a couple of hours before going home. Now, if you look at your maps of the regional park, I'll just describe a few things you can do. So the bus will drop you at the park entrance right at the bottom of the map. One interesting place is the bird colony. To get there from the park entrance, you go up the path to the lake. About halfway round the east side of the lake, you need to turn off and take the path all the way out to the coast. You'll find the colony there, overlooking a little island. Now, if you'd like a swim, remember that not all the beaches are really suitable in this wind. For the safest place, follow the path north from the park entrance, but before you get to the lake, turn right and go down there to the beach. Something that people find interesting is the old ship. It's more than 100 years old. To get there, just north of the park entrance, you take the path which heads towards Okiwi Bay. Then walk along the coast a little way before turning right and following that path over to Rocky Bay. You'll see the wharf, go past that, and the ship is just along there. A long walk, but one that's well worth it, is up to Stony Batter. You follow the path right around the lake to the far side and keep heading north. But if you reach the water tower, you've gone too far. Before that, you want to turn off to your left and take the path to the coast. Now, where else is there? Oh yes, the Settlers Monument. That's popular. So from the park entrance, take the first path on the left and follow it around behind Okiwi Bay. The monument is out at the end there on the headland. Finally, if all this exercise has made you thirsty, there's a kiosk where you can get hot and cold drinks. It's easy to find beside the lake, right on the water's edge. Well, now, if anyone has any questions, feel free.
That is the end of Part 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to Part 2.
Now turn to Section 3. Section 3. You will hear two students talking about the moa with the lecturer. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Thank you all for coming here today to hear about the moa, a kind of animal which has been extinct for a long time. Well, first of all, we look at what the moa are. The moa are 9 species of flightless birds endemic to New Zealand. They were the dominant herbivores in New Zealand's forest, shrubland and subalpine ecosystems for thousands of years. But around 500 years ago, they all went extinct. When I mention extinct animals during ancient times, you may immediately think of dinosaurs, which disappeared around 66 million years ago. Fossils of dinosaurs, which we use to study, are large in number, but not many of those of moa remain, though both animals appeal to people today.
So, the moas sound more mysterious now. But, sir, I've got a question about these flightless birds. How can we distinguish them from other birds?
That's a good question. Birds are commonly characterized by being warm-blooded, having feathers and wings, usually capable of flight, and laying eggs, while the flightless moa, until their extinction, were the largest birds in the world. Their heads are relatively small in relation to their bodies, and they are the only wingless birds lacking even the vestigial wings and substantial tailbones in their family.
That's impressive, but were they born to be like that? I mean, when they were chicks.
Yes, absolutely. So let's move on to the chicks. The eggs of moa were laid in nests and incubated for about 2 months. The chicks would be well developed upon hatching, and probably would be able to leave the nests to feed on their own almost immediately.
I've heard that the male moa are thought to have incubated the eggs. Is that true?
I think there is a possibility for that. I've read somewhere that the sex-specific DNA recovered from the outer surfaces of eggshells suggested that these eggs were likely to have been hatched by the male, but we still need to consult more. But I have a question. There has been some occasional speculation that the moa were still alive, because someone said they had caught sight of them in New Zealand in the late 19th century, or even the 20th. Do you think it's possible?
I'm not amazed by that, since that kind of thing has been claimed several times. But I find it funny, because no reliable evidence of moa tracks has ever been found, and experts still contend that moa survival is extremely unlikely.
So what was the reason for the moa's extinction? I wonder if it was global warming or some other factors related to their living environment.
Well, before the arrival of human settlers in New Zealand, the moa's only predator was the massive Haas eagle. Then the Maori arrived sometime before CE 1300, and all moa genera were soon driven to extinction by hunting. What a horrible thing.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now, listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
All right. Now let's look at the features of some species of moa. The South Island giant moa may have been the tallest birds ever known, and the second tallest of the 9 moa species is the North Island giant moa, with the females being markedly larger than males, both in weight and height.
And I've heard that the smallest of the moa birds are the coastal moa. Is that right?
Yes, you were right. And have you heard about any other kind of moa before?
I know the crested moa. The eggs they laid may be larger than others.
As they mainly lived in the remote interior of the southern island, their fossils are rare or absent in archaeological sites, and no egg remains have yet been identified.
Are there any species of moa that have got more fossils?
Yes, of course. A considerable amount of remains of the stout-legged moa exist, due to the well-preserved properties of their habitat. Their skulls reveal relatively bad vision, a good sense of smell, and a very short bill. Then there is the eastern moa. They were remarkable in having very long and narrow windpipes, which probably enabled them to make louder, more resonant calls than those of other moa, and had the greatest vocal abilities, so they could communicate when they could not see each other in the forest or at night. They used a range of senses, apart from sound, in their search for food, such as their sense of smell and vision.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Part 4. You will hear part of a lecture on the subject of why living in the city may be better for the environment than living in rural areas. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good morning, everyone. Today we're looking at urban migration, the movement of people migrating from outside cities into cities. I think it's easy to jump to the conclusion that a rural lifestyle is greener. However, recent studies have suggested otherwise. First of all, if we take the land area of the Earth, the proportion that cities take up is a mere 3%, and these same cities actually produce 30 to 40% of the carbon that is released into the atmosphere, a lower amount than the 60 to 70% from non-urban areas. Anyway, let's imagine that most people decide to migrate to the city. What kind of impact would that have? For a start, this movement of people from the countryside should lift the pressure of intensive agriculture from the land, allowing forests to regenerate. Another point in favour of urban migration is that it can be far more energy efficient if services are concentrated in the city, for example. This is true for electricity and, as you can imagine, water. Then, once you remember that rural communities are often very spread out, you can see yet another green reason to live in the city. Rural citizens rely on the car to make their journeys far more than city dwellers, who have other more environmentally friendly forms of transport that they can use, such as buses and trains. The journeys tend to be shorter too. Yet another point in favour of urban migration is the kind of recycling schemes that can only take place where the population is concentrated. Take, for instance, Seattle in the USA, where methane gas is being put to good use and is generating energy for the city. It's produced from the city's rubbish, which could not be collected so efficiently from rural areas. Now, another factor that threatens the environment is the growing world population. It's estimated that 75 million babies are now born every year, and in some countries the birth rate shows no signs of slowing down. Urban migration may provide an answer here. Now, in cities, one of the reasons that women tend to have fewer children is that they get married later and start their families later. And the reason for this is that it's far easier to find a job, and once you have one, to get a promotion. So yes, the focus isn't on bearing children. Well, it would be foolish to pretend that there are no downsides to urban living when clearly there are. The thing that critics often mention is the idea that migrants may end up losing their culture, although some studies have found the opposite is true. Rather than give up their traditions, people actually work hard to maintain them. More evident is the fact that compared to the lower rate that is observed in rural areas, we can see that there is more crime occurring in cities. There won't be many of us here today who can say we haven't been directly or indirectly affected by it. There's another issue that we have to deal with. So many cities, including our own, now suffer from high levels of pollution so that the air we breathe is far from pure. And another factor against the urban is greener idea is that urbanisation often drives a country's economy. Put simply, when there is greater wealth in society, more energy is consumed. One of the direct effects of a stronger economy, something that many citizens will now experience every day and may well find stressful, is the amount of traffic on the road, despite the other options we mentioned earlier. This is a problem that is not about to go away, although there are some solutions that could be considered. Let's have a look at some of those.
That is the end of Part 4. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to Part 4.